happen, and we're not seeing people feel the impacts of the promises that are being made by the Liberals.
Well, we've got a lot going on here today. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got a new job posting posted for the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Remember the last one, Jason Jacques, who was criticizing Mark Carney and his government? Well, it turns out they didn't like that. We got a panel on CBC, which is quite something. They bring up the fact that Poilievre criticized mainstream media, CTV and CBC, of not running anything critical of Mark Carney or Nate Erskine-Smith, criticizing Mark Carney's budget, and then they go on to criticize Poilievre some more. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off from Shreya, we've got some new polling data here from Main Street. This one's showing 44% for the Liberals, almost 40% for the Conservatives. This shows an increase of plus 1.7%. This is about what I would expect when you got 2 weeks of media going 24/7 hammering Pierre Poilievre. We got this brief segment here on CTV mentioning Léger had a new poll, which doesn't bode well for Mark Carney.
A new poll is out this week, and it's looking at what Canadians think about the recently tabled federal budget. The Leisure survey shows about 30% of respondents approve of the budget. Only 15% expect it will have a positive impact on their household. More than twice that number are expecting a negative hit.
15% expect this budget to have a positive effect on their household. That is pitiful. We got this one here from Canada Proud. It says, Canadians, would you say you're optimistic or pessimistic about the direction of the country? And this is similar to what we just saw there. 36% neutral and 38% negative, 28% positive. I mean, when you're seeing budget numbers like this, Canadian federal budget deficits under the Liberals, 10 years of this, 90 billion, 35, 61, 48, and now 78 billion under Mark Carney. No wonder we're in trouble. That's not the only metric showing us we're in trouble. We've got the quality of life index here in Canada. We used to be 5th in the world in 2013. Now we're 33rd. This is what the Liberals have done to our country. Moving ahead, when this bombshell news here, interim PBO Jason Jacques, who was appointed by the Liberals, called Mark Carney's spending habits stupefying, shocking, and says the Liberal budget will financially break Canada, as Jinglai points out here. So it seems Carney has had enough and wants a new PBO who's less critical of him. This article here, Ottawa seeking new parliamentary budget officer with tact and discretion. Interim PBO has been highly critical of the government spending plans. So Jason Jacques here has been in the government parliamentary budget office in one capacity or another since 2010. So he's been there for 15 years. This guy knows what he's doing. As the article says here, they want to hire someone with tact and discretion just a few months after appointing the very critical fiscal watchdog on an interim basis. The Conservatives wanted this guy to have a full run at this. The Liberals are saying, no, we want to get a different guy in there.
It should be very alarming, right? Like stupefying, shocking, right? This is not, it's not a funny fiscal outlook. It's a really serious fiscal outlook. And we don't lightly use the word unsustainable, right? Unsustainable means you don't have the option of saying, maybe I'll wait a couple of years, I'll see how things go. It means if you don't change, this is done, right? So it's very serious. And I think as anyone who's managed a household budget knows, if you sit down at the end of the month and you don't have enough money to pay your bills, and it happens month after month after month, you know that something's going to break.
So yeah, that's why they don't like this guy, because he calls it straight. So here's the new job posting. I don't know why this website's not loading properly, but around $250,000 a year. But look at this here. Preference may be given to applicants who are members of or more of the following groups: women, Indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, and members of a visible minority. This is direct, blatant R-word. Why would these people be prioritized over someone else? This should be against the law to even suggest this. And from the article there, we've got language requirements, and underneath here it says integrity with high ethical standards. Okay, yeah, coming from the government. Strategic and innovative leadership, sound judgment, and tact and discretion. Oh, really? Why would that be? So going back to X here, there's people speculating that they're going to create new taxes or raise taxes, and then they want a parliamentary budget officer who has discretion. That's probably a good guess. Who knows? Don't worry, they'll find something else to tax. Yeah. Meanwhile, what do we have? The media attacking Pierre non-stop. We've got Jasmine posting this. Poilievre as a feature story, followed by 4 surrounding anti-conservative stories. She scrolled scroll past, not one story about Mark Carney, the budget, or Nate Erskine-Smith. This is called propaganda, by the way. That's what this is. As you're going to see on CBC, they talk about this and then they just continue to attack Pierre. The hypocrisy is outrageous.
Reporters have been waiting for a while to speak to Pierre Poilievre about the events of the last weeks. I mean, what did we hear from the leader today?
Well, I think it's safe to say that he doubled down. You know, he was asked a handful of questions about what happened last week, what could potentially happen with his caucus, because, of course, there have been rumblings swirling around that perhaps there's more unrest within his caucus, and he stands by his leadership. He deflected most of the questions, but did say that he doesn't plan on changing his leadership style. Take a listen to what he said.
I just want to put Carney and the Liberals to the side here, just as you personally.
Of course you do.
Does this say anything about your leadership? Have you maybe reflected on your leadership style moving forward?
No, my plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada, where our people who work hard can afford a home and food. That is my agenda.
They're desperately trying to attack his credibility, his character as a leader.
So he took 3 questions total on sort of caucus management issues. And in each one of them, he reverted to something that Chris d'Entremont said in September in the House of Commons when he was still a Conservative MP, where he criticized the Liberal government. He repeated this multiple times. He also kind of criticized the media because Nate Erskine-Smith, a Liberal MP, put out a video where he kind of offered the budget a mixed review, and he said that there's a double standard, that we are not journalists are not chasing him down the hallway to get answers on that, but they are with Conservatives.
Okay, so you brought up the main issue here, the issue that Poilievre has, which is true. You guys are not chasing him down. So now you're going to talk about Nate Erskine-Smith, right? Right?
Take a listen to some of what he said about.
Nope, wrong. They're going to keep attacking Pierre.
Chris d'Entremont and what he said in September.
Well, first of all, I just quote Mr. d'Entremont, and I will just quote Mr. d'Entremont. He said, and I'm going to quote Mr. d'Entremont, this is a quote from just a few months ago.
Yeah, he's going to quote him and just use his own words against him. That's the best way to deal with this situation. He did a great job here.
I have a statement here from Mr. d'Entremont. He says, since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. He said that Liberal food price inflation was inhumane. And you know what? He's right.
So this an apparent effort to discredit what d'Entremont is saying, and comments he's made since crossing the floor, including that part of his rationale was Pierre Poilievre's leadership. We did put those comments to Chris d'Entremont this afternoon. He sent us an email in which he said, they are spinning. I've said what I needed to. He continues to prove my point. So the question.
d'Entremont is a snake. If you want to see a full speech he gave last Christmas, supporting Pierre and cutting down Liberals, talking about how they don't show up to the House very often or they're lazy and all this kind of stuff, naming them by name. I have that on my second channel. This guy's a rat. He's an absolute rat.
Now becomes whether or not this is enough to put this issue to rest, or whether or not Pierre Poilievre can expect to face more questions to this effect ahead of his leadership review, ahead of the budget vote next week.
Right. I just want to point out, the audience who watched Monday would remember we did talk about Nate Erskine-Smith in his video on the show for about 15 minutes, and I invited Nate Erskine-Smith on the show today. He couldn't do it, but he is potentially coming on the program tomorrow. Conservatively.
Oh, interesting. Is he coming on the program? Will he backpedal, or will he keep twisting that knife into Carney's back?
I know you've been chasing Mark Carney down hallways to find out what he has to say.
Poilievre's right. They're not doing any of that. They're not asking for comment. They're not chasing down Carney. They're not criticizing the budget. They're not even opening up and looking at it. If Cochrane brings him on, is he going to ask him hard questions, or will he toss him some softballs?
What do you make of what we saw from Pierre Poilievre today, the pushback and the aggression there?
Sure, I think
the pushback and the aggression. It's just this kind of language where they're trying to make Pierre seem like this angry guy. It's very selective wording. I'm sure they're trained. They give them a list of words that they want to paint Pierre with. The CBC are full of snakes.
two things going on here. Number one, in order to refute the story out there that the problem is with Pierre's leadership, they're going to try to impeach the witness. The witness in this case, Chris d'Entremont, and they're showing prior inconsistencies statements, which is a very clear tactic that's been used for many, many years, if not for all of time, in terms of making sure that you're getting your point across, that the person who said the things that really are trying to harm you can't be believed, can't be taken at their word. And they're putting out examples of it, the speech that you just showed before, and other indications of what he may have said to his constituents in the past. So that's the route they're going to take on how to deal with the Chris d'Entremont story. The other aspect with respect to the CBC reporter. Look, David, I was just for the last couple of days in the UK, and as you probably know from the news over there, the head of the BBC and the head of the BBC News have both resigned because of something that happened with respect to a Donald Trump speech way back in January. It was around January 6th, the time of insurrection. Anyway, it would appear that they pushed two pieces of video together. They didn't separate them, made it seem that Mr. Trump was saying one thing and not the other. And they both got fired over it because it proved to be incorrect. It was, as Donald Trump says, fake news. And now Donald Trump's suing them for $1 billion. Why am I telling you this? This is a very common theme out there that people are honing in on, which is, can you trust what's happening with respect to news? Doesn't matter if it's CBC or CTV. Both of them actually got glancing blows from Poilievre today in the press conference. But it's a theme that's happening around the world. And unfortunately, in the case of BBC, it proved to be correct.
Yes, and
this is Lisa just striking hard here. She basically just put the credibility of CBC on the chopping block. She didn't outright say it, but she basically said Canadians need to look into whether they can trust the media that they're consuming. This was a powerful statement here. I don't know if she's going to get a call back for another one of these panels.
The Director General resigned in that one, and there is an interesting dynamic going on with the President and the media writ large. I would say that the changes in the CBC story should have been a clarification or an update, but that, I don't want to inside baseball on that too much. Amanda, your thoughts on it today? It reminded me of a year ago. The sort of pushback with reporters and stuff, as opposed to what we've seen from Mr. Poilievre more lately.
For sure. We see these he puts on different masks at different times. I was just going to say that it harkens back to a style of politics that he had honed really well for some time, and that I think some circles, particularly of conservatives, would say, those were sort of glory days. That's when they were leading. They were 20 points ahead. And you saw this presser where he was...
There is no 20 points ahead. They need to stop with these lies.
Infusing a lot of those slogans. He was getting back to the bit of the hashtag sloganeering, that communication style, which... There was a time when I gave props to the Conservative Party because I thought, you're honing in on one particular message, you're driving it home, you're making it really sticky for Canadians. But the problem is that was a year ago. And what we've learned from it, what we've seen in a lot of conservative communication styles, and the master of it is obviously Trump, is that Canadians have already refused.
The master of it is Trump. Donald Trump often frames things around Trump as his branding. What does Carney do? The same thing. Trump is an elitist billionaire. Mark Carney is also an elitist billionaire, millionaire. We don't know. Those guys live in the same world. They're on opposite political spectrums, but they're much closer together than Pierre Poilievre is with Donald Trump.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. And what we don't see when Poilievre talks is we don't see any accountability. If he's not blaming the Liberals, he's blaming the media. He refuses to take any accountability for the fact that he lost that 20-point lead, for the fact that he lost the election, his own writing, and now members of his own party.
Give me a break. The 20-point lead. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to look at the polling data and make her look dumb. Here's aggregate 388. What does this show? 40% conservative to 43% liberal. Now, this 20-point lead that she's talking about, here's the election. Pierre was at 41%. So what has changed here? They've gone down 1%. And sure, you can look here. They went down to 38. So they've gone down 3%. Now go back to the height of his popularity here. 45%. Carney becomes leader here. Go to the election. 41%. He's lost 4%. Aggregate. 4%. Sure, you could pick one poll way up here and one poll way down there. You can pick Ecos polls and make up whatever data you want. But looking at the numbers, 45 to 41, he lost 4%. Not 20%. These liberals need to be checked on their lies every time they come on here. Do you want to talk about accountability? CBC polls false convoy story back during the Freedom Convoy. What were they pushing? The CBC February 3rd corrected an earlier television story suggesting that Russians were behind the Freedom Convoy. Where's the accountability? There is none. They just pulled the story and that was it. No accountability. The hypocrisy here is rich.
Actually refused to answer questions about why those members defected. This is a style of politics that may have worked a year ago, but I think Canadians are really looking for politicians who are willing to work together, who are coming to the table with some ideas, some fresh thinking, some solutions, and leaving the slogans at home.
Right. Just to be clear.
The slogans at home, Canada's strong. Mark Carney uses slogans. Every party uses slogans. The only difference here is Mark Carney uses ones that are designed to spook Canadians, incite fear. So look at this. In a more divided and dangerous world. This is from July 1st, 2025. Next release here, November 1st, 2025. The world is more dangerous and divided. We've got another one here. This was from May 21st. Canada faces a series of crises in a more dangerous and divided world. This is basically a slogan at this point. Between catalytic rupture and build Canada strong, Carney is full of fear-mongering slogans. She has the audacity to say that Pierre is the one who has slogans. They all use slogans.
Clear, only one has defected. The other has announced her resignation, though did have meetings with the Prime Minister and his staff, we're told.
We're told. Okay. What's this? I'm getting some updates here. 15 Liberals are saying they're defecting from the party and joining the Conservatives and the NDP. Give me a break.
On that point, I want to play. Poilievre was also asked today if this turmoil in his caucus has prompted him to reflect on his leadership style. Take a listen to the question and the answer.
Have you maybe reflected on your leadership style moving forward?
No, my plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada.
Jordan, your thoughts on the events of the day?
Well, he's being very honest.
No, I mean, this is true. Like, there's no room for misunderstanding of that answer.
We wouldn't want to have honesty now, would we?
There. And I mean, look, I think that this is very clearly the face or the mask that he is most comfortable wearing in his public life. It's one that he returns to again and again, even though
a face of honesty. These shills on here are unbelievable.
You can see that there was maybe a moment immediately after the campaign where he had a thought of potentially reflecting and changing track. It's not happening. The lessons that could have been learned from the campaign have been put aside, and he is inhabiting this character that was very successful for him when they were 20 points ahead. But the problem is that now I would argue it's probably not serving him very well at all, because although he was
you don't get to make that criticism.
Trying very hard, you heard over the course of the press conference, to remain focused on the question of affordability, for example. His own talking points and his own attacks on media, his own tone actually made that really, and the news of his own refusal to reflect on his leadership made that the news.
No, she does not get to criticize him on this. Jagmeet Singh threw Canada under the bus for his own pension. He could have taken down the government in December and we'd have a conservative government right now that would be building our country right now. Instead of Jagmeet Singh sold Canada out for his pension and his disdain for Pierre Poilievre. The NDP are a bunch of losers. Like, they are weak, spineless losers. So she doesn't get to criticize a party that is increased in size when these guys got nearly wiped out, down to 8 seats. They're not even an official party anymore. We're going to jump out of that madness here for a second and touch on what Lisa Raitt brought up. Talking about the Europeans, well, we got Kevin Vaughan posting this. Over the past 10 days, I've been in 4 European countries and met with European parliamentarians for over a dozen countries, and I can tell you they're transitioning away from net zero to securitized energy. They learned the hard way the risks of letting ideology drive energy policy. It's not necessarily ideology here. This is the Brookfield Party of Canada. The Liberals are being run by a Brookfield executive and a bunch of Goldman Sachs bankers. Lisa also pointing out there's turmoil in the Liberal Party. Poilievre mentioned Jonathan Wilkinson, Stephen Guilbeault. Carney is dealing with disgruntled environmental MPs, including some that might leave the Liberals if he goes too far in the direction of sanity. Andrew Coyne quoting this one here, Brian Lilly's article. To get his majority, Carney needs to make sure that the Green believers, Jonathan Wilkinson, Stephen Guilbeault, and others don't bolt, though it does appear he would like to replace some MPs. Guilbeault, Carney's heritage minister, is among those deeply opposed to following the same path as the Americans, even though it's the most sensible path. Meanwhile, Wilkinson, the former natural resources minister who was left out of Carney's cabinet, is causing problems for the boss. Wilkinson was not only slighted by being dropped out of the front bench, he also doesn't agree with Carney is on issues like dropping the consumer carbon tax and pausing the EV mandate. Vasi Kapelos asked Wilkinson point blank on this. Obviously, he's going to say he's supporting Carney.
Pierre Poilievre held a press conference and he actually name dropped you, invoked you next to Minister Guilbeault to sort of, I guess, laid some groundwork for his lamenting of the media not covering internal Liberal turmoil enough. So I thought I'd put the question to you directly, since he invoked your name. Are you unhappy?
No, I'm not unhappy. And I didn't see his press conference, although I do find it interesting that he invoked my name. Look, I have been enormously privileged to be the member of parliament for North Vancouver Capilano now for 10 years. I got into politics because of climate and the associated sort of opportunities in the economy, having run energy tech companies for 20 years. I got to be the Minister of the Environment for a long time. I got to be the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources for a long time, and I think made a difference.
Oh, he definitely made a difference. See this here? Canada's GDP tanking here compared to America definitely made a difference. Unfortunately, it's not a good difference for Canada.
I now am working closely with my colleagues who have those jobs to try to ensure that we move things forward.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. Wilkinson's probably pissed he's been stuck on the back benches there. So Carney probably wants to get rid of these eco wingnuts because they're hurting his grift. Mark Carney needs to be able to fluidly change policies to roll out Brookfield's agenda. It's the Brookfield party. It's not the eco green party like these guys think it is.
Lisa, we mentioned the January leadership review, not to suggest there's any real doubt, but just because it's a milestone that he kind of needs to put behind him to move ahead. But, the party has become as much a movement. There's a lot of movement conservatives there because of Pierre Poilievre who've rallied to him. I mean, while he's pulled that together, it did prove not to be enough. And if you have more days like today, does that just deepen the negative feelings that exist outside of the people already committed to?
He's so unbelievable. They brought it up at the beginning that they're not talking about Nate Erskine-Smith. They're not talking about the budget. And he's like, oh, we'll bring on Nate the next day. Don't worry about that. And then just keeps rattling out this garbage.
Conservatives, is that the risk you run here?
Yeah, I think the risk is the analysis that I'm hearing today that we're taking this moment in time as the way things are going to be into the future. Let me paint a little bit of a different picture for you, because I do think that Pierre's tone is going to match a time in the future that will be actually beneficial to the Conservatives. And it's this kind of situation. We're 8 months since the election. We're continuing along the ways of talking about major projects. We're stretching into a year, maybe 14, 15 months. Employment keeps sinking. We keep having problems with inflation, and we're not seeing projects happen, and we're not seeing people feel the impacts of the promises that are being made by the Liberals. And then you have the tone of somebody who's saying, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight everyone. I'm going to fight everyone I can for you because you are not being treated fairly. That's the moment in time when tone meets what's happening on the ground in Canada. And that is not a situation that is not foreseeable. It is very foreseeable. So yeah, Pierre's going to stick to who he is and what he knows. And at some point in time, if the Liberals do not pull this off, they are on a very short leash on a timeline that's probably unfair to them, quite frankly, as a government. But that is the reality of our situation.
Amanda, how do you see it?
Wow, she's dropping some truth bombs here. And you notice right away, Cochrane's going to quickly switch to someone else. Don't want to let that sit in too long.
Yeah, I hear where Lisa's coming from. And I can definitely see that because if you just look south of the border, you see how that picture can be painted. It has been painted. You can see exactly how Trump and the MAGA movement sort of adhered to this idea that when people are feeling a lot of anxieties and you mirror those anxieties back to them, you can create a movement. But I also think that Canadians have rejected that idea and that style of leadership. And when you pair that with some of the other stories that we hear, Chris D'Entremont saying that, 2 MPs come into his office and call him a snake. And there's this nastiness, this toxicity. Even when he had left the party and crossed the aisle and other members of the party were being interviewed and they were name calling. And it's this idea of this serial name calling. It is a huge turnoff to voters. It's a particularly huge turnoff to women. So if they're going to play...
Yeah, and that's why they told that story. They knew exactly what they're doing. They're painting Pierre and the Conservative Party as this aggressive, angry group of politicians that women should stay away from. Show us the video proof. Otherwise, stop spewing this garbage.
This game, they're walking a very fine line. They're going to have to try to find a balance between mirroring people's frustrations and anxieties and not completely turning them off and tuning them out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to be tuning her out. These pundits are absolute morons. Speaking of which, we've got Scott Reed on CTV, another moron.
What do you think? He didn't say he's going to change his leadership style at all.
No, in fact, when he was asked directly, are you going to reflect on your leadership style? Do you think you have lessons to learn? Are there takeaways that you're going to reflect upon? His defiant, explicit answer was no. And possibly there are people out here watching who think they are perfect. It appears that Pierre Poilievre is among them. It's such a disconnected from reality answer. No one is expecting him as leader of the Conservative Party to say, my God, I'm in the midst of a crisis and I'm drowning. But a an acknowledgement, a nod toward, look, it's been a difficult week, but here are the reasons that I feel that I'm the right choice for the party and why I think we're on the right track. None of that. And then again, the sort of snide remarks about the media being biased. All of it is a spotlight on his weakness. All of it is the guy who stands in the middle of the town screaming, I have no problems. And everyone is left to think, well, there's a guy who has problems. So I think that this tone, I think this message, I think this manner all backfires on Pierre Poilievre.
What's going to backfire is when Canadians realize that people like Scott Reid on CTV helped campaign for Evan Solomon. Here they are. And Scott Reid's son works for the Liberal campaign. They don't disclose their bias here. And then he talks as if he's some sort of well-informed pundit when really he's just spewing Liberal propaganda.
Doesn't make him look strong. It makes him look weak. Doesn't make him look like he's in for the long haul. It makes him look like he's in some sort of short-term fight, possibly with reality. You're watching a guy who does not look like he has a firm handle on his own leadership.
No, we're watching a guy who's a Liberal pundit here pushing Liberal propaganda on mainstream media.
And the harder he squeezes and the more he blames others, including the media, the more that his grip looks weak.
No, the more people wake up. I see the comments all the time when people realize they're being lied to by the media. They don't like it. They feel used. They feel betrayed. It's an awful feeling. And what's the first thing they do? They start looking for honest sources of news that aren't getting payouts from the Liberal government. I'm disappointed in T1000 here. I mean, if they wanted to get some credibility, they could say, you know what? We haven't been running that many stories about Carney's awful budget. There's not much in there for Canadians. We haven't been running stories about Nate Erskine-Smith. Yeah, we should do better. T1000, all these anchors on CTV, it's all crickets from them. Instead, we've got Mark Carney telling us how dangerous and divided the world is. Get down, get onto the table. Unfortunately, Schwarzenegger's not coming to save us.